There is a long ago Korean Innu story about Wasakajak and the Great Flood. It seems that, at that time, the people, the animals, and all of creation were not behaving well. There was much arguing and fighting, and even children were doing what the grown-ups were doing, badly. Wasakajak found this to be true for all the relatives, whether they had 4 legs or 2, and the Creator also observed this. That is why the Creator sent the Great Flood, to make things new again. And that flood did just that. Afterward, there was nothing left, except for a few animals and Wasakajak, all clean. And with the breath of Wasakajak and some earth collected by the humble muskrat, the earth was made new again. Wasakajak's dilemma is the dilemma we face today. Who has the right to make the earth anew, and how is it made so? The military, miners, and dam builders are developing the land, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. There is, by and large, no historical or scientific precedent to understanding the consequences of their actions, either collectively or in isolation. They are performing a great technological and geological experiment.
The last 150 years have seen a great holocaust. There have been more species lost in the last 150 years since the Ice Age. During the same time, indigenous peoples have been disappearing from the face of the earth.
We are all living with the resources. We know that one form of life affects every other form of life. We know that there is a spirit in all things, including rocks. And we know that the environmental degradation has contributed to climate change. When you step on one strand of a spider's web, it all moves.
They cut down all the trees, the fir trees, all of them. And then they say they can't practice our way of life. We are this land and everything that comes from it. There is no freedom, no sovereignty. Freedom is living how I choose to in my people's way. We don't own it, but we know that we belong to it. We don't own the land, but we take care of it. We believe God owns the land, not people. Native American teachings describe the relations all around. Animals, fish, trees, rocks, as our brothers, sisters, uncles, and grandpas. These relations are honored in ceremony, song, story, and life that keep relations close to buffalo, sturgeon, salmon, turtles, bears, wolves, and panthers. These are our older relatives, the ones who came before and taught us how to live. Their obliteration by dams, guns, and bounties is an immense loss to Native families and cultures.
When a fish pond is dredged and filled for resort development and construction jobs, we destroy a generations-old resource as a sacrifice for short-term jobs and luxury developments. When our agricultural areas are left without water so that golf courses can be kept green and scenic, we lose the opportunity to subsist on our land.
Americans would rather fight for the rainforest than deal with their own backyards.
This is not America. This is a colony. The purpose of a colony is to take its land, to take its resources, and exploit its people. It means turning a cultural attribute or a person into a commodity to make a profit.
Out of sight, out of mind, the native peoples are relentlessly jackhammered by those handmaidens of colonialism, neocolonialism, and globalization. The military, mining, and energy capitalists always return. When they have every last river dammed, every last secret metal cached in Mother Earth carved out, every last bit of serenity shattered by a combustion engine, Will they be happy? Can they contain themselves before they destroy the North altogether?
Danny Billy, a member of the Seminoles of Florida, once said, "The way of life of the red people is like a clay cup, and the way of life of the white man is like a styrofoam cup. The clay cup takes a lot of care because if you drop it, it's going to break. The styrofoam cup does not take much care. If you drop it, it doesn't break. You have to be really careful with the clay cup because if you put something hot in it, it will burn you. Compared to the styrofoam cup, which you use once and throw away. It takes a lot of work to keep the clay cup intact. The styrofoam cup is the white man's way. They have no rules or regulations in their way of life. They say they do, but in reality, they do not."
It is hard to return to your traditional lifestyle when the species upon which we lived, those that fed us, have gone from the earth forever. You cannot return. You have to go to the museum to look at the stuffed birds, but you cannot eat them.
In 1971, the Department of Interior reported that the low-sulfur strippable reserves in the West were 10 times more abundant than those in the eastern part of the nation. By the mid-1960s, the federal government had determined that 1/3 of all strippable coal resources and 1/2 of the country's uranium was on reservation lands. That reality ultimately put Native communities without infrastructure, attorneys, negotiators, environmental policy coordinators, without most of the strategic assets necessary to sit across the table from a multinational mining or oil company, face to face with the big companies and their own destinies.
Every one of you sitting here today is carrying at least 500 measurable chemicals in your body that were never in anyone's body before the 1920s. We have dusted the globe with man-made chemicals that have undermined the development of the brain and behavior. Everyone is exposed.
Our traditional laws lead us to understand that economic development cannot subsist on a deteriorating resource base. The environment cannot be maintained and protected when growth does not account for the cost of environmental and cultural destruction.
Like the eternal spring after the freezing winter, there's always a rebirth.